What happens when one of country music's most beloved icons walks into what should be a friendly chat show, only to face a host who's forgotten basic respect? In just 36 seconds, Kelly Clarkson would say something so shocking, so completely out of line, that it would turn a simple interview into television chaos. The lights were bright that Tuesday morning as Dolly Parton walked onto the Kelly Clarkson Show set. Her famous smile was wide, her voice warm as always. She wore a beautiful pink dress that sparkled under the studio lights, looking every bit the legend she is. The audience clapped loud and hard for her, their faces full of joy at seeing someone they truly loved. Kelly Clarkson sat behind her desk, tapping her fingers on the wood. Something felt different about her that day. Her smile seemed fake, forced. Her eyes had a cold look that the cameras couldn't quite hide. The producers had told everyone this would be a fun, easy interview. They were wrong. "Welcome back to the show, everyone," Kelly said, her voice trying to sound cheerful but missing the mark. "I'm here with the one and only Dolly Parton, and let me tell you, I have some questions that I think America really wants answers to." Dolly sat up straighter in her chair, still smiling, but now with a tiny bit of confusion in her eyes. This wasn't how these interviews usually started. Usually hosts would ask about new music, maybe a funny story from the road. But Kelly's tone was different, sharp, mean, almost. "Well, honey, I'm always happy to talk," Dolly said, her voice as sweet as honey. "What's on your mind?" Kelly leaned forward, and that's when everyone watching could see something was very wrong. Her eyes narrowed, and her mouth twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile anymore. It was more like a smirk. "Dolly, I think it's time someone asked you the real questions," Kelly said, her voice getting louder. "Questions about why you think you can just buy your way into everything. Questions about whether your whole sweet act is just that, an act." The studio went quiet, not the good kind of quiet where everyone's listening closely to a great story. This was the bad kind of quiet, the kind where everyone knows something terrible is about to happen. Dolly's smile stayed on her face, but her eyes changed. They got harder, more careful. She'd been in this business for more years than Kelly had been alive, and she knew when someone was trying to start trouble. "I'm not sure what you mean by that, Kelly," Dolly said, her voice still calm but with steel underneath it. "Could you be more clear about what you're asking me?" Kelly laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was cold and mean. "Oh, come on, Dolly. Everyone knows you just throw money at problems until they go away. Your theme park, your music, even your image. It's all just bought and paid for, isn't it?" The audience started to shift in their seats. Some people made small gasps. Others looked at each other with wide eyes. This wasn't what they came to see. They came to see their favorite singer talk about her music, maybe tell a funny story or two. They didn't come to watch her get attacked. Dolly took a deep breath. Her hands, which had been resting calmly in her lap, now gripped the arms of her chair just a little tighter. But her voice stayed steady. "Kelly, I've worked hard for everything I have," Dolly said. "I started with nothing, and I mean nothing. I came from a family so poor we didn't always know where our next meal was coming from. Everything I have, I earned with my voice, my songs, and a lot of very hard work." But Kelly wasn't done. If anything, Dolly's calm response seemed to make her angrier. Her face got red, and her voice got even louder. "Hard work? Really?" Kelly said, practically yelling now. "Is that what you call sleeping your way to the top? Because that's what people say, you know. They say that's how you really made it in Nashville." The studio went dead silent. Even the camera operators stopped moving. Everyone knew that Kelly had just crossed a line that should never be crossed. She had just said something so awful, so completely wrong, that there was no taking it back. Dolly's face changed completely. The sweet smile disappeared. Her eyes went ice cold. For the first time in the interview, she looked truly angry. But even angry, she kept her dignity. That's what made her a real star. "Excuse me?" Dolly said, her voice quiet but deadly serious. "What did you just say to me?" Kelly seemed to realize she had gone too far, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. "You heard me," she said, her voice shaking now. "I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking." Dolly stood up from her chair. She was small in size, but in that moment, she seemed 10 feet tall. Her voice was still quiet, but everyone in the studio could hear every word perfectly. "Young lady," Dolly said, "I have been in this business for more than 50 years. I've written thousands of songs, sold millions of records, and helped more people than you could ever count. I have never, not once, done anything that would bring shame to my name or my family." Kelly tried to interrupt, but Dolly held up her hand. "I am not finished," Dolly continued. In all my years, I have never met someone so rude, so disrespectful, and so completely wrong about who I am and what I stand for." The audience was completely silent now. Some people had their hands over their mouths. Others were shaking their heads in disbelief. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Kelly's face was bright red now. She looked like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. For the first time since the interview started, she seemed to realize that she had picked a fight with the wrong person. "I came here today," Dolly said, her voice getting stronger, "to talk about my music and maybe make some people smile. Instead, I find myself being insulted by someone who clearly doesn't know the first thing about respect or basic human decency." Dolly started to unhook her microphone from her dress. Her movements were slow and careful, like she was making sure everyone understood what was happening. "Mrs. Parton," Kelly said, finally finding her voice again, "please, let's just—" "No," Dolly said firmly, "there is no let's just anything. You made your choice when you decided to attack my character and say things that are not only false but deeply hurtful." The producers behind the cameras were running around, trying to figure out what to do. This had never happened before on the show. No one knew how to handle it. Dolly pulled the microphone completely off and set it down on her chair. She looked directly at Kelly, her eyes still cold but also sad. "I feel sorry for you," Dolly said. "I really do, because someday you're going to realize that being famous doesn't give you the right to be cruel. And when that day comes, you're going to remember this moment and wish you could take it all back." Kelly opened her mouth to say something, but Dolly wasn't done. "I have spent my whole life trying to lift people up, trying to make them feel good about themselves," Dolly continued. "You seem to think your job is to tear people down. That's the difference between us, honey. That's the difference between a real star and someone who just thinks they are one." The audience started to clap, slowly at first, then louder and louder. They were clapping for Dolly, showing her that they were on her side, showing her that they knew Kelly was wrong. But Dolly wasn't interested in applause right now. She was interested in making sure Kelly understood exactly what she had done. "When I was young," Dolly said, "my mama taught me that if you can't say something nice about someone, you shouldn't say anything at all. Maybe someone should have taught you the same thing." Kelly's hands were shaking now. She looked like she might start crying. But Dolly wasn't finished with her yet. "I have been called a lot of things in my life," Dolly said. "Some good, some bad. But no one, and I mean no one, has ever questioned my integrity the way you just did. And for that, you should be ashamed of yourself." The silence in the studio was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Everyone was staring at Kelly, waiting to see what she would do. Would she apologize? Would she try to fix what she had broken? Would she show even a tiny bit of the class that Dolly had just shown her? Instead, Kelly did the worst possible thing. She got defensive. "Look, Dolly," Kelly said, her voice getting high and whiny, "I'm just trying to do my job here. People want real interviews, not just puff pieces where everyone pretends everything is perfect." Dolly's eyebrows went up. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Kelly was actually trying to make this seem like it was Dolly's fault. "Your job?" Dolly repeated, her voice getting colder by the second. "Your job is to make up lies about people? Your job is to hurt people for no reason? If that's your job, honey, then you need to find a new line of work." The audience started murmuring among themselves. They were getting restless, and not in a good way. They came to see Dolly Parton, their beloved country music queen, and instead they were watching her get treated terribly by someone who was supposed to be professional. But Kelly wasn't backing down. If anything, she was getting worse. Her face was red and sweaty now, and her voice kept getting louder and more shrill. "I'm not making anything up," Kelly snapped. "I'm asking questions that other people are too scared to ask. That's what real journalists do." Dolly laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh you make when someone says something so ridiculous that you can't help yourself. "Journalist?" Dolly said, shaking her head. "Honey, journalists check their facts before they open their mouths. Journalists have something called integrity. What you're doing isn't journalism. It's just plain old meanness dressed up with fancy cameras and bright lights." Kelly's mouth dropped open. She wasn't used to people talking back to her like this. Usually, when she got nasty with guests, they would just sit there and take it. They were too scared of bad publicity to fight back. But Dolly wasn't like other guests. Dolly had been dealing with bullies a lot longer than Kelly had been alive. "How dare you?" Kelly said, standing up from behind her desk. "This is my show, and if you don't like how I run it, then maybe you shouldn't have come on." The audience gasped. Even the cameramen were looking at each other with shocked expressions. Kelly had just told one of the most beloved entertainers in the world that she shouldn't have come on her show. It was like watching someone shoot themselves in the foot on live television. Dolly stood perfectly still for a moment, just looking at Kelly. Her face was calm, but her eyes were blazing. When she finally spoke, her voice was so quiet that everyone had to strain to hear her. "You're absolutely right," Dolly said. "I shouldn't have come on your show, and I won't be staying on your show." She started walking toward the edge of the stage, but Kelly wasn't done making a fool of herself yet. "Wait, where are you going?" Kelly called out, her voice cracking. "We're not finished here." Dolly stopped and turned around slowly. The look she gave Kelly could have frozen water. "Oh, we're finished," Dolly said. "We were finished the moment you decided to attack my character instead of asking me about my music. We were finished when you chose to be cruel instead of kind. And we were definitely finished when you told me I shouldn't have come on your show." Kelly realized she was losing control of everything. The interview was falling apart. The audience was clearly on Dolly's side, and she was looking like the bad guy in front of millions of viewers. So she did what bullies always do when they start losing. She got even meaner. "Fine, leave then," Kelly said, her voice getting nasty again. "But don't expect anyone to feel sorry for you. You're not the sweet little country girl you pretend to be. Everyone knows you're just as fake as you're." She stopped herself, but it was too late. Everyone knew what she was about to say. She was about to make fun of Dolly's appearance, something that would have been cruel beyond belief. Dolly's face went white. For a moment, she looked like she might cry, but then her jaw set, and her eyes got hard as diamonds. "Finish that sentence," Dolly said, her voice deadly quiet. "Go ahead. Say what you were going to say. Let everyone see exactly who you really are." Kelly's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She knew she had gone too far, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. "I was just going to say that you're fake," Kelly mumbled, not meeting Dolly's eyes. "No," Dolly said firmly. "That's not what you were going to say. You were going to make fun of how I look. You were going to attack something that has nothing to do with my music or my character. You were going to be cruel just for the sake of being cruel." The audience was getting angry now. People were shaking their heads and making disgusted sounds. Some of them were even booing Kelly, which never happened on talk shows. Dolly looked out at the audience, then back at Kelly. When she spoke again, her voice was sad but strong. "I've spent 60 years in this business," she said. 60 years of people making jokes about how I look, about how I dress, about everything except the thing that really matters, which is my music. I thought maybe, just maybe, things had gotten better. I thought maybe people had learned to be kinder." She paused and looked directly at Kelly. "But here I am, at 77 years old, still having to defend myself against the same small-minded, mean-spirited attacks I faced when I was 20. And the saddest part is, it's coming from another woman, someone who should know better, someone who should understand what it's like to be judged for everything except your talent." Kelly tried to interrupt, but Dolly held up her hand again. "Let me tell you something about being fake," Dolly continued. "Fake is pretending to be someone's friend when you're planning to attack them. Fake is smiling at someone while you're getting ready to hurt them. Fake is what you did today, Kelly, not me." The studio was so quiet now that you could hear the air conditioning humming. Everyone was hanging on every word Dolly said. Even the crew members had stopped what they were doing to listen. "I came here today with an open heart," Dolly said. "I came here ready to talk about my new music, ready to share some stories that might make people smile. I came here because I thought we were going to have a nice conversation between two professionals." She shook her head sadly. "Instead, I found myself face to face with someone who thinks being mean is the same thing as being honest. Someone who thinks tearing people down is the same thing as building herself up. Someone who has forgotten that there's a real person sitting across from her, not just a target for her cruelty." Kelly was crying now, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of anger and frustration. She had lost complete control of her own show, and she knew it. "You don't understand," Kelly said, her voice shaking. "This business is hard. People expect you to be professional." Dolly cut her off. "People expect you to treat your guests with respect. People expect you to ask questions, not make accusations. And people definitely don't expect you to attack someone's character based on gossip and lies." Dolly started walking toward the exit again, but this time Kelly didn't try to stop her. She just stood there, watching one of the biggest stars in the world walk away from her show. But Dolly wasn't quite done yet. At the edge of the stage, she turned around one more time. "You know what the real tragedy is here?" Dolly asked. "You actually have talent. You can sing. You can entertain people. You could have been someone that people looked up to. Instead, you chose to be someone that people are embarrassed for. She paused, letting that sink in. I hope someday you figure out the difference between being strong and being mean. I hope someday you learn that you don't have to tear other people down to make yourself feel important. And I hope someday you realize that being famous isn't the same thing as being respected. The audience started clapping again, louder this time. They were showing Dolly that they supported her, that they knew she was right. But more than that, they were showing Kelly that they were disappointed in her. Kelly slumped back into her chair, looking defeated. She had started this interview thinking she was going to show everyone how tough she was, how she wasn't afraid to ask the hard questions. Instead, she had shown everyone exactly the opposite. She had shown them that she was small, mean, and unprofessional. Dolly stood at the edge of the stage for a moment, looking back at Kelly one last time. The whole studio was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Would Kelly finally apologize? Would she try to make things right? Would she show even the smallest bit of the grace that Dolly had been showing all along? But Kelly couldn't help herself. Even in defeat, even with her show falling apart around her, she had to get in one last dig. Good luck explaining this to your fans, Kelly called out, her voice bitter and nasty. Good luck explaining why you couldn't handle a few tough questions. That was it. That was the moment that broke something inside Dolly Parton. She had tried to be patient. She had tried to be kind. She had tried to give Kelly chance after chance to do the right thing. But Kelly had just proven that she was exactly the kind of person Dolly couldn't stand. Someone who kicked people when they were down. Someone who never knew when to stop. Dolly turned around slowly, and when she looked at Kelly this time, there was no sadness in her eyes, no disappointment, no hurt. There was just pure, cold anger. Tough questions? Dolly repeated, her voice so quiet it was almost a whisper. Is that what you think those were? She started walking back toward Kelly, her heels clicking on the studio floor like a countdown. Every step was deliberate. Every movement was full of purpose. The audience held their breath. Even the producers stopped running around and just watched. Let me tell you what tough questions sound like, Dolly said, her voice getting stronger with every word. Tough questions are about my music, about my business decisions, about my charity work. Tough questions are based on facts, not gossip. Tough questions come from a place of genuine curiosity, not malice. Kelly tried to look tough, tried to act like she wasn't scared, but everyone could see that she was shrinking in her chair. Dolly might have been small in size, but right now, she seemed like the biggest person in the room. What you did, Dolly continued, wasn't journalism. It wasn't even good television. It was just a sad little person trying to make herself feel important by attacking someone who couldn't fight back the way you expected. She stopped right in front of Kelly's desk, looking down at her with eyes that could cut glass. But here's what you didn't count on, Dolly said. You picked the wrong person to mess with. You thought I'd just sit there and take it because I'm polite and I smile a lot. You thought my kindness was weakness. You were wrong. Kelly opened her mouth to say something, but Dolly cut her off with a look. I'm not done talking, Dolly said firmly. You've had your turn to speak, and you used it to be cruel and unprofessional. Now it's my turn. The studio was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Everyone was mesmerized by what they were seeing. This wasn't just a celebrity having a meltdown. This was a masterclass in dignity and strength. I have been in this business since before you were born, Dolly said, her voice calm but deadly serious. I have dealt with executives who tried to cheat me, critics who tried to dismiss me, and competitors who tried to destroy me. But you know what I've never dealt with before? Someone who invited me into their home, metaphorically speaking, just so they could attack me. Kelly's face was bright red now, and she was breathing hard. She looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. That's what this is, you know, Dolly continued. Your show is like your home, and you invited me here. And then you treated me like garbage in your own house. Where I come from, we have a word for people who do that. We call them people with no class. The audience started murmuring again. Some of them were nodding in agreement. Others were shaking their heads in disgust at Kelly's behavior. But all of them were completely focused on what Dolly was saying. You want to know what's really sad about this whole thing? Dolly asked. It's not that you attacked me. I've been attacked before, and I'll survive this too. What's sad is that you did it in front of all these people who looked up to you. She gestured toward the audience. These people came here to have a good time. They came here to see their favorite singers and actors and maybe learn something new. Instead, they got to watch you turn into everything that's wrong with this business. Kelly finally found her voice, but it was shaky and weak. I was just trying to get a good interview, she mumbled. Dolly laughed, but it wasn't a mean laugh. It was a sad laugh. The kind you make when someone says something so ridiculous that you almost feel sorry for them. A good interview? Dolly repeated. Honey, a good interview makes both people look good. A good interview teaches people something or makes them feel something positive. A good interview brings out the best in everyone involved. She leaned forward slightly, looking directly into Kelly's eyes. What you did was the exact opposite of a good interview. You made yourself look petty and unprofessional. You made me look like a victim, and you made everyone watching feel uncomfortable and sad. The cameras were still rolling, catching every word, every expression, every moment of this incredible confrontation. The producers knew they had television gold on their hands, but they also knew it was the kind of gold that comes with a very high price. But the worst part, Dolly continued, is that you did it to someone who has never done anything but try to make people happy. You attacked someone who has spent her whole life giving back to her community, helping children get an education, and bringing joy to millions of people around the world. Kelly started crying again, but this time, they seemed like real tears. Maybe she was finally starting to understand what she had done. I'm sorry, Kelly whispered. I'm really sorry. Dolly looked at her for a long moment. Her anger seemed to soften just a little bit, but her resolve didn't waver. I appreciate that, Dolly said quietly. I really do. But sorry doesn't undo what happened here today. Sorry doesn't take back the things you said about my character. And sorry doesn't give back the respect that you threw away. She straightened up and smoothed down her dress. I'm gonna leave now, Dolly said, and I'm gonna try very hard to forget that this ever happened. But I want you to remember it. I want you to remember this feeling, this moment when you realized you had gone too far. Kelly nodded, tears streaming down her face. And maybe, Dolly continued, next time you have a guest on your show, you'll remember that they're a human being with feelings and a reputation that took them years to build. Maybe you'll remember that your job is to make them feel welcome, not attacked. She picked up her purse from beside her chair and slung it over her shoulder. I've met a lot of people in this business, Dolly said, looking around the studio one last time. Some of them were kind, some were mean, and most were somewhere in between. But I've never met anyone who seemed to take actual pleasure in being cruel. Until today. The silence that followed was deafening. Kelly had stopped crying and was just staring at Dolly with wide, shocked eyes. The audience was completely still. Even the crew members had frozen in place. I hope you figure out what kind of person you want to be, Dolly said, her voice gentle now, but still firm. Because right now, you're not someone I'd want to know, and I don't think you're someone you'd want to be friends with either. And with that, Dolly Parton walked off the Kelly Clarkson show. She didn't storm off. She didn't slam any doors. She didn't make a scene. She just walked away with the same grace and dignity she had shown throughout the entire horrible experience. Behind her, she left a studio full of stunned people and a host who had just learned the hardest lesson of her career. Kelly sat in her chair for a full minute after Dolly left, not saying anything, not moving, just staring at the empty space where the country music legend had been standing. When the show finally went to commercial break, Kelly was still sitting there, looking like someone who had just realized she had thrown away something precious and would never get it back. The audience filed out quietly, many of them shaking their heads in disappointment. And somewhere in the hallway outside the studio, Dolly Parton was probably already thinking about her next project, her next song, her next way to make the world a little bit brighter. Because that's what real stars do. They don't let other people's cruelty dim their light. They just keep shining, no matter what.